Today is June 25th, 2013. My name is Teresa Larson, and I'm with Carl Bleyle, who's the organist and choir director at Collegiate United Methodist Church in Ames since 1962. Carl, do I have your permission to talk to you today and record your voice?
Yes.
Please tell me when you were born and where you were born.
I was born in 1935 in Dayton, Kentucky, which had the only hospital around in Kentucky, but I attended school in Fort Thomas School Systems of Kentucky.
The school system that you attended, was it anything like, for example, Ames, Iowa?
I would say it had as strong a program as in music or in anything as Ames Public Schools. Fort Thomas was kind of a bedroom community for Procter & Gamble officials, and they made sure that when the taxes were assessed, half of the tax dollar went into education. Can you imagine that today?
Did you have musical parents?
I had two parents. They both sang in the May Festival Chorus, which sang with the Cincinnati Symphony in oratorios and major choral works. But none of them was overly talented, I would have to say.
When did you first realize that you had music instincts?
Probably when my mother insisted I take piano lessons. And then one found out that, okay, I did have some kind of a talent.
Did you have a series of private music teachers then?
I took lessons from the wife of the minister of the church on piano. In high school, I also went to Cincinnati to the conservatory there and took lessons in French horn for 3 years. And so, as a high school student, I had quite a good education, quite a private education, I would say.
When did you first start having public performances? Did you play for occasions quite early in your life?
Well, of course, there were always the private recitals that were given by the teacher, and I did play organ in our church when I was probably a sophomore, but then I obtained a job in Cincinnati, Ohio, for my junior and senior years, and so every Sunday morning I took the car over to Cincinnati across the Ohio River and played at the church there, at the Methodist Church.
You were a young person with a pretty important job. I mean, that's very pivotal to the church service. So did you compete against older, more experienced people to get that job?
Not necessarily. See, I'd also taken, I forgot, organ lessons with Wayne Fisher at the College Conservatory of Music in Cincinnati. And so I did have kind of a good background. But then you must remember that then as today, organists are a rare item, to be sure.
So they were looking for someone. You matched up just fine. And so as a high school kid, you were driving to play church organ.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about how a series of lucky breaks kind of started your music profession. You were a high school student. How did you get to university, for example?
Well, I being a third horn player in the high school band, and all three of us taking lessons, professional lessons in Cincinnati. When it came to the orchestra festivals in Lexington, Kentucky, guess who took the first 3 chairs in French horn? The students from Fort Thomas Island. And so I think that was a lucky break, that moving into there, having that kind of background. If you don't have that kind of training, you're not going to go very far, no matter how much talent you have. And then I've had a lot of lucky breaks throughout my career. One of them was when I interviewed for a Danforth Fellowship to attend college in Minnesota. The interviewer happened to be an organist. And so we talked more about organs than we talked anything about the Danforth Fellowship. And so therefore, I got it. I walk out of there knowing that, yes, I did have it because of the rapport that was there. I would say that's very lucky. He could have been a physicist for all that matter.
And so how did you get to Iowa State University in Ames, Iowa?
Well, I had an interim position at Hood College in Frederick, Maryland. And there I played the piano. I was an organist, a theory teacher, and one of my roommates was John O'Malley, who played violin. I played for his recital and didn't do too bad a job. A few days later, I told him I had received a notice from Iowa State, from Lutton Music. It's a musical organization that finds jobs for people. I said, I received a notice saying that there was an opening at Iowa State University for an organist and piano teacher and theory teacher. And John said, oh, you have the job. I said, what? He said, Dr. Hart, who is the head of the department out there, played the piano for me in my master's recital. Oh, you have the job. And I had the job. I traveled nowhere just because of that lucky break of playing the piano for someone in an interim position.
And what a lucky break for Ames that you came. And what happened then at Iowa State University to get you positioned at Collegiate United Methodist Church then?
It seemed as though I was replacing the organist here. And it seemed that the organist at the university also was the organist at Collegiate United Methodist. So I inherited not only the job, but a brand new organ of 3 manuals, which is better than any I had ever played.
A little bit later, we will go to that organ and we can talk a little bit more about it. But now let's just talk about, what does a church organist do? Now, worshipers come in and they hear beautiful music, but that's just a minuscule part of it. Tell me about the job of church organist.
Well, the job of church organist is to try to work with the pastors in providing music that might fit the service. That's not always easy to do. But the organist has to play preludes, postludes. The organist also has to accompany choirs. The organist also has to play hymns and has to fill in at times during the service at very, very short notice. It's not an overtaxing job, particularly when you've been doing it for over 50 years, but it does make you keep aware of what is going on in the service.
At the very start, when you were a young organist, how did you start learning the repertory of a church organist? Did you just practice and practice and practice, or I mean, it doesn't just happen.
Well, I had gone through 2 recitals, a master's recital and a undergraduate degree recital, and I also had taken lessons at the University of Minnesota with Heinrich Fleischer. And so I had quite a bit of training, but practice is the word, practice, practice, practice. And you don't start on the major works, the difficult ones, you start on the easy ones.
And so can you characterize for me now what is in your repertory after 50, 60 years of playing the organ? List the composers, if you will. Give me the range of composers or the number of pieces. Just give me a feeling for what's in your head and in your hands.
Well, I try to do a variety of music. Sometimes from the Renaissance, the Baroque, definitely, when the organ was king of the instruments. Classical period, not too much is written. The Romantic period is a lot with Brahms and Mendelssohn and Liszt. And then the 20th century has much, much music written, particularly in the Lutheran churches in Germany. And I almost did my dissertation on the organ works of Siegfried Reda, who was a 20th century organist who wrote some very difficult music. Mm-hmm. And so there was a period in my life when I was playing a lot of this contemporary, very contemporary German music.
So in addition to the church services, the church organist is also on call for marriage celebrations and celebrations of life and funerals and that kind of thing. I'd like to have you do some math for me. How many weddings do you think you've played for in your long career?
I probably play from 8 to 12 weddings a year. Previously, there were a lot more people who were getting married in the church and using organs. Now, brass using string quartets, recorded music, and so there's a lot of extracurricular music where the service doesn't call for organs anymore. I guess if you multiply that by some 50, well, let's say 60 years. 10 times 60 is what?
Well, you're at 600 now, but you might even get to 1,000 if you take some of the smaller ceremonies and that sort of thing. And what about the funerals?
Funerals I have played a lot of. Those are a lot easier to play. You don't have mothers telling you what to do. But a funeral is a different thing. It is a festive occasion in some respects, but the music is a little bit more, I should say, serious and not so up and lively.
Let's talk again about the job of organist. I mean, you have to work on the weekends. And that's a little bit different than some people.
On Sunday morning, yes, when everybody else is sleeping, then I am up here for the 8:30 service and the 11 o'clock service. Except now I no longer, as of this year, play the first service because it's moved more into a more contemporary service, a lighter service. Unfortunately, it's my grandson who is playing in this band, and so I have started the lack of inheritance of the papers for him.
So, church organists get some days off, but there just are an awful lot of Sundays that you've played throughout your life.
I would say for the majority of my life, I have played 2 services on Sunday. This is even when I was not at Ames or working on degrees. Every city I went to, there was a need for an organist, and so I filled that need. And I would say 2 average on a Sunday, starting as a junior in high school.
Playing the organ at a church is, of course, it's a worship experience. Part of it is a performance. Part of it is just the music itself. So let's see, any performance that happens that's live has things that can go awry or funny things that can happen as a church organist. In terms of weddings or anything, can you think of any memorable times that would be unusual?
Well, the one thing that bothers me about playing the organ is occasionally the keys seem to be in the wrong place. And I may put my foot down on a pedal and it's the wrong note. However, I have come to the point where I immediately at the last second realize that the foot is going on the wrong note and move it over to the correct note. Sometimes it doesn't work, sometimes it does. I would probably the most embarrassing moment was when during a church service I had a folder of music on up on the rack, the music rack, and it was kind of a large folder, and somehow I managed to tip the rack down so that the music folder fell on the keyboard. Now, that wouldn't have been so bad had there been no stops on, but I had full stops of the organ on, and the crash that was there sent the ministers back to see if the organist had had a heart attack. I would not be the first organist who died on the bench, by the way. That was one. Another one was during the communion service when I have a clock, an atomic clock that keeps time for the service, and it was a communion service, Christmas Eve. And right about during not the elevation of the host, but when the bread and the wine become the blood and body of Christ, or a symbol of it, it went off.
At the most sacred moment.
Yeah, the most sacred moment. But I justified it, and I said, in the Catholic Church, when it said, risen from the dead, a bell rings. And so I was just trying to emulate the Catholic service. But who knows? And another thing that really was embarrassing is when I was in high school, the custodian decided he would be very nice and would wax the bench. And he also waxed the keys. And so I come in, I usually slide in on the bench. I slid on the bench and whoop, went all the way over to the other side, almost off. Can you imagine playing a service on waxed keys? And then there's one other thing that really bothers organists. They're called ciphers. That is when notes sound and you can't get them to stop. It's part of the electropneumatic action there. There's no way to get them to stop. You just have to figure out which stop is ciphering and push it off. Well, the other thing is to play along and see a note stick. Humidity does this, and in church it's not air conditioned all the time. It sticks. And so I was playing a service, and I was playing, what is that horrible sound? I looked, there is an A below middle C that was down. So throughout the hymn, I had to go, every time I got to the A, I even push it back up or avoided the A and played it someplace else. So, but anyway, those are some of the prized moments.
That would take a lot of skill and a lot of practice
And a lot of experience.
Yes. Now, I'm sure you had mentioned weddings, and sometimes there are parents who intervene in weddings, but sometimes, funny things can happen at weddings too. Do you have any of those stories?
Well, some of the funniest things are when the bride or groom decide they're going to sing and can't remember the music. Another one was I was playing ready for the processional, and someone came up and said they don't know, the couple doesn't know if they really want to go through the ceremony. So I played 45 minutes more. Can you imagine trying to find out, or improvising, or just doodling or diddling on the organ while they decided they actually were going to get married? They finally did. I have only talked one couple out of marriage, and I won't say who it was. They decided, yeah, I was right. They weren't ready. They weren't ready for marriage. I must say, I had several couples who came back and said, we wish we had listened to you. But those are some of the hilarious moments.
And on the other end of the organist's experience, sometimes music is so lofty, so inspiring, it's almost rapturous. Have you experienced that in your tenure here at Collegiate United Methodist?
I experienced that as a choir director. When you have a good choir and they're singing really very fine classical music, and I don't mean the classical period, but written by major composers. I remember one moment when I was directing the Brahms Requiem. It was in honor of Lester Moore, whose wife had died. And right as he came, during the I think the first movement, he came up in the balcony, and I could see the balcony right from there and see him walk in. That moment I almost froze. The baton flew out of my hands. I was directing them with my hands, and that was a moment, really a touching moment. But there are moments when we do the Mass, and when the choir is singing well, and the orchestra is playing in tune and playing all the right notes, that it's very difficult to continue directing, because there is an emotion inside that music does bring out. It brings out to the people. It probably shouldn't do it to the director, but in my case it does. Or even when the choir is singing unaccompanied music. When I'm playing the accompaniment, there's too much to do to get it all worked up or inspired. But when they're doing it and singing, and all of a sudden there are moments where it's very difficult to continue, or even more so, difficult to sit down back on the organ and play the doxology. Mm-hmm. So there may be sometimes when the doxology just doesn't sound quite as perfect as it should be. That is, I think, the result of my still feeling this emotion that comes from the choir singing. So.
Mm-hmm. There have been wonderful musicians who have passed through the choir at Collegiate United Methodist Church. And can you tell me about some of the people that you've helped train or you've helped nurture along in their music experience?
Well, we have the benefit of the university, and I had the benefit of teaching students history class. So somehow they may have thought that coming to my choir would help their history grade. It usually did, but that was because they were smart kids. And so, but then when I retired from the university, the students in the choir, the previous students, did their own proselytizing. They brought people they knew who could, who appreciated good music, appreciated music within the service, and I have a lot of Catholic students, and that's because we sing a lot of Latin. Because a lot of the great music is in Latin. Of course, all the masses are in Latin, and they bring their kids, they bring their students, and so it's a self-perpetuating kind of thing.
And are there some people who've gone on to professional careers then that you...
We have many students who have gone on to professional careers. One of them is Jennifer Porto, who is singing with the Leipzig Opera now. Another one is Laura Peterson, who is at Cleveland Institute. Wayne Tigas was singing in New York, a major singer there for a while. Joy Rogenbusch, who unfortunately had a heart attack not too long ago, was in New York City doing this. And it's very interesting. I could go on and on and on. Twyla Emke, who is right up there, is singing the part of Daniel in San Francisco. And it's very gratifying to see them go on and be successful. One of them actually said, you know, after following your conducting, I had absolutely no trouble following any conductor past you, any conductor I could follow. Now, I don't know if that's a compliment or not. They might refer to the downbeat, the upbeat is the downbeat, which is one of the things. When you go up, that's the downbeat. You don't down here. Yeah. And so that's the key to my directing, the upbeat is the downbeat.
And where did you learn that, or how did you acquire that?
Well, I was not trained in choral directing. And so what I do, the success comes from finding and working with good people, with talented people who, if they don't know the music, they will take it home and they will learn it. And when we have practice, we don't go over very many notes. You try to take it home, learn it, and come back. That way we can do the major works. We can do more difficult things. And the older people, we had 10 Iowa State singers last semester, plus many other Iowa State singers who were older, who have now graduated. And so with a talent like that, you don't need to be a great conductor. They just need to know what you want, and then they will do it because they're that smart.
But the nice thing is that when you have rehearsal, you're not working on the rudimentary part of it. You're working on the interpretation.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And
one of the bad things about having good students, talented students, such as in the recent play they had at the university, is that several of my students had lead roles. Now, do you know that's a problem, because on Wednesday nights they have rehearsals at the university, and somehow they think that that's more important than singing with me. But I must say, most of them learn the music and on the side, and the performance doesn't suffer because of them. That's the bad thing. I say, well, I keep telling them, I wish at times that I had my church choir in Madison, Wisconsin. It was a Lutheran church there. I said, they believed everything I said. They didn't say a word during rehearsal. And I said, boy, were they a wonderful, disciplined group. Except they couldn't sing. That's the difference. I would much rather have lively people than having fun in rehearsal, because when it comes down to the real performance, they can come through.
your experience here in Ames, your long career at Collegiate United Methodist Church, is that typical for organists to have a long career?
Depends, I guess, on how soon they die. There's a lot of movement. I don't think that there was a great deal. I know in Europe there are a lot of older organists who seem to have been there for a long period of time. But I haven't done any study on that. But I noticed that the Ames churches, other Ames churches, seem to have quite a turnover in personnel.
So it's possible that you may have one of the longest continuous running careers of a church organist in Ames, at least at this time period.
I would say so.
Yeah.
Although I was looking through church minutes from 1993, and there was an item in there now. What are we going to do? How are we going to go about hiring an organist and a choir director, when Carl decides to retire. That was 1993. We're only 20 years later, and I'm still holding down the job. For better or worse, I don't know.
Well, I think we've talked a lot about your experience, and we've talked a lot about your integral part of the Ames community and the music here. I think we should go to the organ.
Okay.
Let's do that now.
Okay.
Carl, can you tell me what kind of organ this is?
This is a Reuter organ, built, I believe, in Kansas. It's a 3-manual organ. That is, there are 3 different keyboards plus the pedal. It was installed in 1962 as a memorial by Clarence Fincham and his wife in honor of Nichols, Dr. Nichols, who was a former pastor here. Okay. The instrument is a very versatile instrument. That means it plays many periods of music well, but not perfectly. Now, the organ at the university plays Baroque music extraordinarily well, but cannot play Romantic music. So this kind of is a mishmash of playing just about anything you can want. It can play Bach, it can play French music, it can play Romantic music, it can play contemporary music.
Why don't we take a little tour of it?
Excuse me?
We can take a little tour of the instrument.
Okay. First of all, the organ has each keyboard has 61 notes. 61 here, 61 here, and the pedal has 32 notes. Now you notice that the pedal board is arranged the same way that the keyboard is, except of course they're bigger because feet are bigger than fingers. That makes sense.
I'm going to quick ask you, how many pairs of shoes have you worn out on the keyboard down there?
I have had 3 pairs of shoes in all these years. The first pair of shoes was my dad's old formal wear shoes. And what did they have? High heels. And if you look at these are the newest ones. In fact, I'm still breaking them in. Leather, because you have to slide over the keys, and you can't do that if you have rubber. There's also this big gap in here so that you can actually play two notes at once.
I never knew that.
2 notes at once. On the pedal board, which is one that most people enjoy, this is the lowest note. You can imagine last Sunday when I had a shoulder store and they were looking at the organ, what's the lowest note? And the highest note is, don't know if you can hear that.
I can.
It's good for dogs and not really necessarily for people. As you look up here, you see all of these little buttons. These stops are used for the pedal. These for the swell, which is up behind the screen. These over here that you can't see are for the great organ. The great organ is the one that's out here. Mm-hmm. And then the ones here on the right are for the choir, which is back in there. The pedal is back in there. And you can see, I don't know if you can see, but the largest pipes are there. There's one that's 16 feet long in the back there. There are, what do you use the 3 manuals for? Well, a lot of music has something like this. So it's terraced dynamics. In other words, they're in terraces and not decrescendo and crescendo. They're in terraces, and this is the way most Baroque music was written. When you played on the secondary manual, it was less. When you played on the great here, then you would have a very, very full sound. And so that, but, as I said, this is an instrument that is that you can get crescendos and decrescendos on and play different kinds of music if you listen very carefully now. And if you, I don't know if you can watch over there, but
We'll do that again, and I'll take a picture of that. Go ahead.
okay, yeah. I will start loud, and then as the shutters close, then the sound gets less and less.
I could see the shutters opening and closing.
I noticed one of them doesn't close all the way.
One of those little things that needs to be adjusted.
Now, there are several different kinds of stops, families. The one that is exclusive to the organ, these are called the principal stops, and you will see them out here in the front. Let's look at the unique rows in the front. There are 3 rows of tiny. Do you see those 3 rows?
I will take a look at those.
I have here a stop I'm putting on. It says 3, a Roman numeral 3. Every time I play a note, you hear 3 different pipes. Now, I don't think you would... You surely wouldn't want to play that as a hymn or a hymn. What do they do? Well, first of all, you have that main stop. What is that? It's the one right there. See the one with the little up in the top there? There are sleeves, and that's how you tune. Now that lowest pipe, the biggest pipe, is 8 feet long. About 8 feet long, and that gives the pitch actually as you are playing it. And so that's the lowest note. Now, if you want to make it louder, I add the 4-foot octave. And that is the set of pipes that are right in front of the ones with the red bands. And I will, now you just see it gives a... And the congregation wants to hear those higher pitches because they're singing the regular pitch. And so if you play all kinds of 8-foots there, the same pitch, then they get confused. And when you play higher pitches, they hear, but look. That's the set of pipes right in the front there. And then that mixture adds to the top. That's what I use for hymns, and that's the basic sound of the organ. Now, if I want to have a lower sound, you hear that low note, they come from those pipes over there with the red on the top. And this note is an octave lower than that. How do you get it? Because of the same pipes, they're covered. If you cover a pipe, it will sound an octave lower. And so if I want to have like a full thing organ at the end, now if I really want to make noise, I will go. Then you notice over here, and I have no idea how that could have gotten on when that music fell, is a sforzando pedal. I don't know if you can see here, but the red says danger. The green says fine, that means you have current. The yellow one says caution, you have a lot. And this says... Bach would have never heard that sound, but the Romantics would have heard it. And so this is why, with all those stops, you can play Romantic music very, very well on this instrument. So that's the principle. There are principles on the swell. There are none on it. Now, what is another? Well, how about the strings? That's called the viola. But I also have a viola celeste on. And that viola celeste is tuned just a little bit sharper. So listen. So yes, it makes the strings with the vibration of the strings. And so that is used a great deal for romantic music. One little trick I can do here also on the pedal, I want to show you this because not too many people do, is, okay, here is, there's a low note on the flutes. That's a flute sound. But now listen. If you listen carefully, although it's beyond the normal person's hearing, that is playing an octave lower than the low note. And how do I do that? I play a fifth above. I'm playing C, now I'm going to add G, but listen to the rumble.
I hear
I
it.
can fake. It's called a combination tone theory, but I can fake that. And just think, if I want to play this little piece here by Dupre, and he calls for 32-foot. It's on the music. He calls for a 32-foot long pipe. Can you imagine it? It's going to be covered, however, so it's only going to be 16 feet long, like that. But watch what I'm doing on my feet here. I can. That's okay. I'm playing the one note that is written here, but I'm playing a fifth above each of those notes. And here is what I get. Again, I won't do that, and here's what it sounds like. Here's what it sounds with.
It sounds so much richer the second time.
A lot of the pitches on here, particularly that one, is really below the range. You feel it is more than you really hear it. And that rumble in there gives you a 32-foot. So I can fake this registration that he's asking for. That's okay. That's the strings end. And the strings are usually only on the swell. And then the flutes. Well, there's actually a French piece from the Baroque period called Flutes. And what I'm going to do is play flutes from 3 different manuals, 3 different kinds. There's that's the third category, the flutes. And so I can play 3 different types of flutes. If you listen carefully, you can hear. There's a slight difference. Now, what else can I do? This is something strange about the organ. I was playing the same note.
Yes.
I was playing the same note. What is happening here? I'm playing the same note and getting 5 different pitches.
Yes.
Every time you hear a musical instrument, if you listen carefully, a string, you will hear a great number of overtones on every note. The string is vibrating in the length, halves, thirds, fourths, fifths. It is there. And you can easily do this on the grand piano by isolating the string, putting your finger in the half, and it jumps up an octave, or a third, it jumps up to a fifth. And so therefore, since the organ is reinforcing overtones. And what happens here? Well, let's look at this. It makes a beautiful
Vibrato sound.
sound.
Yes.
Or I can pretend I'm a clarinet. Because I'm using stops that imitate the overtone series of a clarinet, which is closed at the end of one end. And so I can get all kinds of different coloristic sounds on the organ by manipulating these. And so here's a lovely Bach piece. That was a clarinet. I can add and do this. And that adds the complete overtone series.
And is that at your discretion?
Oh, yeah.
So
Now-
the music could be interpreted many different ways.
Well, sometimes it's at my discretion. If you're playing Bach, he doesn't tell you what to use. And you don't have to use that much. You just have to have clarity for the counterpoint. Now, if you are playing French music from the Baroque period, you see what that says?
I can't see it from here.
Flutes.
Oh, it just says
It
flutes.
says flutes. This says Bassa de Crumhorn. This one says Récit de Lazard.
I don't know what that is.
But listen how it relates to the pitch. 12 notes higher. And so I add that, and so I have a pitch. Not only the original pitch, but also 12 notes higher, and that is what they're calling for. So the French are really very, very particular in the Baroque period and throughout what they use. And the Germans are not. They are more interested not in the color of the sound, but in the sturdiness, the clarity of the counterpoint. And you'll hardly find any Frenchman writing a fugue in the Baroque period. They just didn't do that.
Tell me about how this particular instrument compares to the great organs of other cities or the great organs of other churches.
Well, you have to realize that in Europe, basically, the older organs are either German organs, they're French organs, Austrian organs, English organs, which have no pedals and are awful. They're just weak, very weak sound. And so those organs are being created for the music that is being composed in those countries. Now, as we get into this mishmash of where all cultures joining together, then you have a problem. You cannot possibly build an organ that can play all of the music of every country as it was intended to be played. You have to kind of just fudge here and there and get as close as you can. That's why I say this organ, and a lot of the organs that people, not very few people, three-manual organs are being built. No, the organs are expensive, and churches don't seem to have that kind of money. Remember, this was a gift. A total gift for the church, and so they spent no money on the organ. What I would say is that if you want a French organ, you can have a French company build you a French organ, but it's going to be an anachronism. It's going to be something that will play this kind of music, play something like the clarimbo, Don't you love the well-tempered organist at the top? So anyway, that's.
And this organ has had some, in addition to your skilled hands, it's had some other masterful hands play it. It was dedicated by a very famous
It was
organist.
dedicated, I think you know who did the dedication there, E. Power Biggs, who at that time was one of the great organists. He recorded on European instruments, and even though his technique was not perfect, what he did for organs, you cannot, no one can mimic that anymore. So he was here, and as I understand it, that the first program he did was packed. The congregation was packed. And where were you?
Well, I was up in the east balcony.
Up in the east balcony, but as a little toddler. Yeah. And so he very graciously offered to do a second recital. So we had two recitals here by E. Power Biggs instead of just one. That showed the enthusiasm, I think, of the community at that time for the organ, for church music, and maybe for E. Power Biggs. So, and in the meantime, we have had a lot of fine organists come here who have played. Heinrich Fleischer has played here. Gerhard Kropp has played here. Several, well, just recently, organists from the University of Iowa played a concert here, double Disselhorst on the organ. But now that the university put in an organ, they have an organ series there, and of course, I think most of the people who play on that organ will play music that is suited to that instrument.
Yeah. Well, is there anything else you'd like to add about the music life of Ames before we sign off now? And then I'll let you have the final say with the organ, with a piece of music.
I came out here in 1962 on a two-lane highway called Highway 30, I believe it was. There was hardly space enough for two cars, and a two-lane highway. And I was wondering, what have I gotten into? Just what have I gotten into? We came here. I was teaching theory. I was teaching piano. And I don't think I was teaching organ at that time, because we had an old Allen organ in the new old music building, which was a horrible instrument. But we didn't have very many organ people there. I saw a music department that was in its birthing woes. It was trying to come out. And fortunately, we had several administrators at that time. Bob Parks, we had Dan Zaffarano, Carl Hamilton, Marty Ulmer, and they somehow had an idea that music was important. And so gradually the music department grew. Not that we got a new organ by any means at that time, but we did get a new building. And we had a new building before chemistry and biochemistry, which did not set overly well with the heads of those departments. But it was that movement in of the administration to try to make the music program a big success. Our early concerts were over in the Armory. I know I played the organ there, the little electronic organ over there. I guess they were okay, but I think I put them out of my mind for good. And then we moved over here to use this organ and this place because the university had no place. So once the new music building was made, a new auditorium, then of course then we have a very strong program, and a lot of our students have gone out of here and done extraordinarily well in almost every field. I think the department is highly respected. When I came here, well, the dedication was filled. 1993, I had a notice, as I saw a note that there were 700 people in the congregation to hear one of the works we did with the choir. I have seen that tapering off because, in my opinion, the sanctuary, and I don't think just here in this church, the sanctuary is no longer a sanctuary. It is a continuation of the outside world. And People come in dressed in shorts. Kids come in dressed as though they're ready to go out to play. There's talking that goes on during the prelude, and it's just as though this is an extension. And that I do not see as I see it as a popular trend in general. But I don't, entertainment, we want to have entertainment. Entertainment is fine, but still, when you hear all this great music, you see all this great preaching, all this great literature that has been written about Christianity and other Christianity, you say, where is that going? And I kind of see it slipping out. That's why I say, no, our choir is going to do classical music. They're going to do Latin if they need to. They're going to do, if they do 20th century music, it's going to be by 20th century composers who are noted as classical composers, not stuff you get off of the internet. And I see that trend moving. Fortunately here, we have a choir of about 45 people. And they all, I think, are here to sing this kind of music. And so sometimes we may be singing to the choir. The choir is singing to the choir. But there's still enough people in the congregation, I think, who appreciate it. That's the trend that I see going on. And of course, the trend towards sports and everything else, all entertainment. Yes, I did watch the Chicago Blackhawks win last night. Yeah, it was kind of exciting, but that's just part of my daily life, and it's not the whole thing.
Well, I would love to your final statement be something that you could ease us on out as a testimony to good music and a great. Bravo.